Like, thanks. All right.
Whatever that is.
Here we go. So it says find all factors of this beautiful cubic function we have here. Okay. In order to find all of our factors, we're gonna have to bring out some of our old factoring techniques. Okay. First you should always check for the what? GCF. Is there a GCF?
Yes.
Where? No. Womp womp womp. Second, you're going to determine what is the next best shortcut to possibly use here. Grouping. Is that what you're a genius? Grouping. We're going to use grouping. Why? Because anytime you have 4 terms, you should think of grouping. I have 1, 2, 3, 4 terms. Do we see that?
No, I don't know.
Okay, we can pretend that we don't see 4 terms, but there are 4 terms, okay? So for our 4 terms, I'm going to group the first 2 together, x cubed minus 3x squared plus x minus 3. Okay, the purpose of grouping is so that you can find GCF in smaller batches. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So the purpose of grouping is to find GCF in smaller batches, okay? So now, what is the GCF between these 2? X squared, agreed?
Yeah.
What is the GCF between these 2?
Nothing.
When there's clearly nothing in it, it's Casper the Friendly, 1. Okay, so I'm gonna remember they don't disappear. You're not disappearing from your family, you're just moving out the house. So we factor it out, we get x squared, and we're left with x minus 3 plus 1 times x minus 3. Okay, after you factor out the binomial pairs, you now are going to just factor out what is your common factor between your 2 terms now. X minus 3. And when I factor out x minus 3, I'm just left with x squared plus 1. Okay, when you're trying to find your zeros, that means you're setting each factor to 0. So step 3 is to set each factor to 0. Each factor to equal to 0. So that's our step 3. We're going to take each one of our factors and set it equal to 0. So I have x minus 3 equals 0. And I have x squared plus 1 equals 0. Good, good, good.
So much fun. This I actually like this.
Oh my gosh, I'm
So we're all not pretending that this was never taught. Good.
No, you taught this.
I'm glad. There's something that y'all are opening in meeting.
You know.
All right.
Oh, so that's where our eyes.
This is where the I come in. And why does the I come in here?
That's -3.
It's going to be the square root of a negative, right? So therefore, x equals I plus or minus I. Okay. So now we have our zeros. And we can write our factors. So here are our zeros. X equals 3 and x equals plus or minus I. Okay. On the test, they may have you write your zeros as a set. If you write your zeros as a set, that's what that's a horrible brace, but that's my brace.
Oh my God. That's broke your foot. My God. Oh.
Are disrespectful.
Not that. I wish we
Did
had
you
that.
not just
I
hear
could
what
not
you
even
said?
think that. It's like actually remember that.
Anyways, haters.
I wish that you had put Zoom going. Oh, I wish so bad. Wait, it happened in this class? No, it happened in Sam's. You broke it in class?
No.
You fell in class.
I fell in class, but I broke my ankle at home.
You fell on the stairs.
Yeah.
Like at your house or something.
I
But
fell
you also like mess up your like
my knee in class. Yeah, I fell off out of my chair in class.
Like crap you every time you come to school.
I really don't like y'all right now, and it's recorded as evidence of my bullying at work. Here we go. Just it's being recorded that I'm being bullied. All right, so for the last step is to write your factor form. Okay, so we're writing our factored form. We're just writing these as their opposites, right? Yeah. So my factors are, we have x minus 3, x plus I, x minus I. And that is the factored form. So we have our zeros and our factors, which is what it asked for. We found the zeros, yes, and we found the factors. Okay, I'm gonna have you guys do what we just did for example number 6. Okay, the difference is there's a GCF, exactly. Huh? You have to do the GCF first and then group. Yep. Your GCF is 2, exactly. So so remember, we're following the same steps. Is there a GCF? We're following grouping because there's how many terms? 4. After we do our grouping, we're going to set each factor equal to 0 to find our zeros. That 2 is just a numerical factor. It doesn't come back until the very end when you write all your factors out. Yeah. All right. I will be walking around if you need help. Did. All right. So step 1 was to always check for a GCF. Is there a GCF? Yes. What was my GCF? 2. So for this, that means I'm dividing everything by 2. So when I divide everything by 2, remember this is a factor. It's called greatest common factor. So this comes back into play at the end, but for right now, it's just going to minimize what I'm working with numerically. Does that make sense? Yes. So we're working with 2x cubed plus 5x squared plus 8x plus 20. I don't know. Okay. Now I decide what factoring technique can I use, and we're going to use grouping. And how do I know I should try grouping? Because there's 4 terms, right? I'm going to group, you go together, you go together, you go together. Part of grouping allows for you to find GCF of pairs, right? So the GCF of this pair is x squared. The GCF of this pair is 4. So I factor out this. I have x squared, and I'm left with 2x plus 5. I factor out this GCF, which is 4, and I'm left with 2x plus 5. Now, what is my common factor? 2x plus 5. I take out 2x plus 5, and I'm left with what? I'm left with x squared plus 4. Do we see that? Okay. Now I finished my grouping. What was the third step? Third step is set equal to 0. So I take each factor and I set it equal to 0. Yes? So each factor set equal to 0. This is going to end up being x equals -5/2. Yes? This is going to end up being x equals, yes, because it's going to be the square root of -4, and the square root of -4 equals plus or minus 2i. So these are my zeros. Agreed? Yeah? So then step 4 is to write in factored form. Factored form is you're taking into account all of your factors. This is a factor, this is a factor, this is a factor. So our answer would be 2x plus 5/2 times x plus 2i times x minus 2i. And that is my factored form. Huh? Yes. Thursday?
Yeah.
Yes.
I always know like which are like.
Oh, wait, can you